when we look at our role of developing this Laguna Salada deposit in Argentina within the sort of broader nuclear context, we are both forward-looking at how we can do things better, but we're also backward-looking because society is busy judging us because of legacy issues, and we have to keep those in balance. So what I'm going to be doing today is talking very little, in fact, about the deposit, and mainly about the environment in which we find ourselves with that deposit and how we're going about getting the social license to develop that project. And during this presentation, I'm going to be making lots of forward-looking statements. U3O8 Corp is a Toronto-listed company that is focused entirely on South America at the moment. We have just under 50 million pounds of uranium in 3 deposits, one in Guyana, a second one in Colombia, and the third one in Argentina. And we prioritize the Argentinian deposit because of some of the financial factors. The capital cost to get the mine into production is reasonable, and its cash cost of production is reasonable, but I'll come back to those points later. The takeaway from this is that Argentina is our priority from a financial and technical point of view. But the second reason that Argentina is a priority for us is that it's already a nuclear country. This is a graphic of the amount of electricity that's generated from nuclear in Argentina starting in 1990 and going through this year and projected to 2018 and 2019. And we can see that there's a projected strong growth in the electricity generated from nuclear. The strong growth started with Atucha 2 coming on stream, but then Embalse going for refurbishment, going offline for refurbishment. And when Embalse comes on halfway through 2018, then the green bars show that component of electricity coming back into the grid from nuclear. So at the end of 2019, about 9% of Argentina's electricity will be generated from nuclear, and that's equivalent to a demand of about 650,000 pounds per year of yellow cake. The third reason that we're in Argentina is because of the incredibly well-developed nuclear industry here. The country has capacity to design, build, enrich fuel, make the fuel rods, and it has spent storage capacity as well. However, the one thing that is missing in this whole nuclear cycle is locally generated yellow cake. And today, there are 2 deposits in the country that have economic assessments on them. 2 deposits where people know what the capital cost and the operating cost is going to be. The one belongs to the Argentine Nuclear Commission. It is a state corporation. The issue with that is that the state, the Argentine state, has other priorities on which to spend its money. It is not going to go with the development of the Cerro Solo deposit. It's a very nice deposit, but it's just not going to happen in the short term. Which leaves our deposit, Laguna Salada, as having a sort of pole position. We're the only other project that has an economic assessment in this country. And we're about 2 years away from a feasibility study, and the rate at which we get through that feasibility study simply depends on availability of financing, which has been pretty difficult for companies like us since Fukushima. Now, what we are absolutely focused on is low-cost production. We are not sitting around and waiting for the uranium price to go up. Yes, I think it will go up. I think that the situation at the moment is unsustainable. But we have Kazakhstan producing 40% of the world's uranium at very, very low costs. And unless we can be reasonably competitive with Kazakhstan, we shouldn't be in this business. So we have an absolute focus on production cost. And we've got a lot of levers that we can pull to get our production cost comparable with Kazakhstan. However, despite that being our focus, our aim is to have a seamless relationship between the future mine and the communities that host us. And we have an opportunity, just because of geography, of being able to produce a low-carbon uranium, which is going to have appeal to the market. And although we've focused on those things, we work in a world of the people around us, the fabric of society around us, and we desperately need the social license from those people to be able to put this Laguna Salada deposit into production. And that is a huge focus for us as well, the non-technical focus. Now, Laguna Salada is an incredibly simple deposit. It is a flat gravel plain, and the gravel is completely unconsolidated. You can literally take a shovel and dig out the gravel. And the uranium and vanadium is depicted in these diagrams, which are slices through the gravel, as a yellow layer. And the uranium and vanadium is in the same mineral. It's a yellow mineral that's just encrusted loosely on the pebbles. So if we are taking off the unmineralized, or the gravel that doesn't have any uranium and vanadium in it, what we would be doing is driving continuous miners in and out of the plane of the screen, and they would just be picking up that gravel and putting it back on the backside of that trench. So although the continuous miners are working in this orientation, the trench actually crabs sideways, and the trench is only about the width of this room. So the barren gravel material would just be lifted off the yellow stuff, put on the backside of the trench, and then when we, in the second diagram, the lower diagram, when we're actually mining that yellow material, that would just be lifted by conveyor into a truck. It would go a short distance to a bunch of screens where we simply just wash that gravel with water, and we lift the pebbles out of it. And only 9% of the gravel, which is the very, very fine sort of silty component of the gravel, has got most of the uranium and the vanadium in it. That gets mixed into a slurry and piped to a central processing facility. So that gravel, as soon as it's washed, goes onto the backside of the trench. And as that trench is migrating sideways, we take the plants that are just on the leading edge of that trench, and they immediately get transplanted to the backside of the trench. So the environmental restoration is going in lockstep. It's going at absolutely the same speed as the mining is. And the critical thing about this deposit is whether you visit it in day 1, year 5, or year 10, all you would see is one trench. The trench would just be in a different place, and the environmental restoration would already have been done. Cost. The horizontal axis is the grade of that fine material that gets pumped through to the central processing facility. And the vertical axis is the cash cost of processing that material and getting the uranium out of it. And the blue line shows that it shows the cash cost of production for each year in the 10-year mine life that's modeled at the moment. And because this deposit is so simple and it's flat, we can literally walk up to the richest part of the deposit where our margin is biggest and start mining there. And that's the way the mine layout is at the moment. So in year 1, our cash cost of production is just over $11 per pound. And then eventually in year 10, it goes up to $42 per pound. So where we focused on at the moment, the Kazakh production is at about $9, $10 cash cost per pound. That's our aim, that's our comparison. And just recently, we have been absolutely focused on that higher grade material, and that red circle in this diagram shows where in the last couple of months we've found another 2 years worth of production that would have a production cost of $9, $10 per pound. And now we're absolutely motivated. We understand the deposit a little bit better, and that's where we focus to get those costs down. So the idea would be for year 1, 2, 3 to slip leftward on that diagram at lower costs, and then we would cut off that high cost tail to the project. So that's what we're doing on the ground on a technical basis. I've spoken about the uranium. One thing that I should just mention is that the central processing facility that receives the slurry of fine-grained material, we use an alkaline leach on that, which uses two kitchen products. Kitchen is stuff that we use in our baking soda and washing soda. So it's a completely benign bunch of elements, reagents that we're using there. Energy storage. We are in the incredibly lucky position of having vanadium with the uranium. And the vanadium comes out in the same leach process. And vanadium, the vast majority of vanadium is used in the steel and the chemicals industry, 94% of it at the moment. But a growing component of vanadium is used in both lithium-ion batteries and another battery that I'll talk about in a minute, in the clean energy industry, in energy storage, which is one of the most exciting and challenging developments in the clean energy space. So the vanadium battery that happens to be linked with phosphate, that lithium-ion battery has almost double the charge capacity of the battery that Tesla is using in its batteries and in its cars and its wall packs. So there's demand coming from the lithium-ion batteries, but for vanadium. And the other key thing about these batteries, they call them thermally stable, which is a nice way of saying that they don't catch alight. The other battery that is incredibly important from a grid-scale storage environment, and particularly for a country like Argentina, which is so long and thin, is the vanadium redox battery. These are ugly batteries. They are huge batteries. They are not batteries that we're ever going to use in our cell phones or our mobile devices. They are two big tanks of vanadium 2 and 3 plus on the one side and vanadium 4 and 5 plus on the other. Those two liquids get charged, and when they gravitate together across a membrane or a plate, they generate charge. They generate current, I should say. And so there's no limitation on the size of these batteries. The size of the battery is directly proportional to the size of the tank that you've got. These are enormous batteries. The biggest battery in the world today is a 2 megawatt system in the States, but the Chinese today are building a 200 megawatt battery that is a vanadium redox battery. These are huge. They don't compete with lithium-ion up to about 2 hours. Lithium-ion is much more efficient in that space, but if you need power for longer than 2 hours, vanadium redox is the way to go. And we're starting to see vanadium demand pick up from the battery industry. The blue bars are vanadium for the steel and chemical industry, and that's growing at about 3 to 4% a year. But the green and purple bars are the component of vanadium that's required by the battery in the clean energy industry that's starting to grow exponential. The environment. This project is in a red area of this map of Patagonia, which is an area of some of the fastest desert development in the world. In the last 50 years, the part of Patagonia that's officially described or classified as desert has doubled in size. And the reason for that is us, it's people, and bad management of the environment. This is the Laguna Salada deposit. This is what we're inheriting. And to us, this is the environment that we have got to restore after it's been mined. So those trenches that we were talking about would be cut through this gravel plain. But for the people that live in this environment, this is everything that they know. This is their land. They've been there for generations. They have a completely different point of view. And we have to respect that point of view. We can't change, we have no right to change the lives of these people and tell them to get out and go and do something else while we mine. We have to adopt this and leave it in a better state than we're finding it. And that is going to be a bit of a challenge. But we've got some tools. The first thing is the shrubs. The shrubs create a microclimate that it protects everything from the wind. The wind blows at 25 to 30 kilometers an hour. And the shrubs are the only place that provide a bit of shelter against that wind. They're the only things that provide a bit of shade, and they also create a little bit of humus. And you can see that the grass, and this is just after the rain, so it's a little bit green. The grass that is growing near the shrubs is taller than the grass a little bit away from the shrubs, and I'll come back to the importance of that a little bit later. But the shrubs are the key to fight against this encroaching desertification. Now, when the picture that we're inheriting is on the left, this gravel is extremely unhospitable to any plant species because it is layered. You have carbonate layers and you have gypsum or sulfate layers. The gypsum is the carbonate is extremely alkaline, and the gypsum, although the gypsum is a natural fertilizer, it's too concentrated. So the plants, basically, their roots get burnt by that gypsum as they're going down. So any plant here is really, really battling to grow in this environment. Once we've mined that and once we've turned over that gravel, we homogenize the pH, we dilute the natural fertilizer, which is the gypsum. And that, just by moving that gravel, and the other thing is that on surface there is a layer of volcanic ash from a volcano in Chile that is very nutrient-rich and is very fertile, and that can be mixed in it'll be mixed in while we're mining it. So we actually create from the gravel a slightly less hostile environment. The other thing is that when we're transplanting those shrubs, obviously we disturb the roots, we cut the roots and all that kind of thing, which was just a fact of life. So we're stressing that plant. So the only way that we can de-stress that plant is to cut back the surface so that the roots aren't trying to draw the same amount of water as they had to for a big leaf surface area. And the other key thing to this restoration, though, is this mycorrhizal fungi. It costs $10 per hectare to impregnate the gravel with this fungus. And what the fungus does, it has a symbiotic relationship with the roots of the plants. It basically goes out and helps the plant roots get water and nutrients. And this fungus allows 10 times the amount of water and nutrient to flow back into those roots. So we've got a couple of ways, key ways, of restoring this environment to something that's actually better than the environment that we're inheriting. I mentioned the grass just now, and sorry, this is the last slide on this environmental stuff, but it is absolutely key because this is the way in which we can engage the local communities, get the local communities to help us. We're not asking them to change their way of life. All we are doing is empowering them to have a higher carrying capacity for their sheep, and we're giving them tools to generate that. The root mass of grass is absolutely in proportion to the amount of leaves or grass blades that it has. And so the bigger the clump of grass, the more carbon sequestration there all is, the more absorbance of CO2 and putting out of oxygen, but carbon capture as well, both within the soil and within the humus layer. But this is where the management comes in on the right-hand side. If a grass is grazed constantly by the sheep, like is happening in this area, the sheep will kill that grass because the grass never has a chance to actually recover. And as the grass shrinks on surface, it's shrinking underneath. So the only way to manage a delicate environment like this is to, with electric fences, to intensify the grazing system. You have a lot of sheep grazing and grazing the grass flat, and then you move them off with an electric fence into the next area, and you give the grass time to grow and recover and grow a root system that can fetch the nutrients, can store the carbon, and can fetch the water. And this is the only way. And then by the time it's seeded, the sheep are coming back onto that. We could probably triple the carrying capacity. Currently, one sheep takes 10 hectares in this area for survival. And I think that we can triple that by simple management. Water is the other fundamentally important thing. Certainly in South America, just about every time a mine is shut down, it is accused of water pollution. We know that. So let's deal with the water. So the plant that's designed in the preliminary economics assessment has a reverse osmosis unit on the backside of it. So it takes in hypersaline water from lakes in the area. And the reverse osmosis, once we've been through the processing, the salt is actually useful in the extraction of the uranium and vanadium. But the water that leaves the plant, the final step is that it goes through a reverse osmosis system. So we're taking in salt water that is too salty for livestock or human consumption, and we're putting out fresh water at the other end at actually very little cost. We would produce, it's 20 million liters a year at the moment, and we can probably take it up from there. People are always talking about sustainable development, and I don't know what sustainable development is. It's words a lot of the time. But in this environment, we've got the two fundamental tools that are important to that community. We've got clean water, and we've got a way of bettering the environment and increasing the carrying capacity of the semi-desert to carry more sheep per hectare. So that is the way that we can engage the local communities, and they already are helping us in the test work that we're doing, full engagement from the very beginning. Let me just touch on renewable energy for a minute, because this is another advantage of the project. Patagonia is one of the windiest places on Earth. Wind speeds are average 25 to 30 kilometers an hour in this area. And that's a little bit problematic for us at times, but let's harvest that in wind turbines. And we're looking at the economics of that at the moment. We need about 7.5 megawatts peak power. And the way that we can adjust the mining operation for this natural resource, which is the wind, is that the wind blows at ground level mainly during the day. So we would mine at night because we don't need as much energy for the mining. It only takes up about 20% of the energy that we need. We would mine at night when the wind's not blowing at ground level so that we don't create dust. The uranium is very, very fine-grained. And the processing plant that uses 80% of the project's power would be use batch processing, and that would run flat out during the day when the wind is blowing. So we would need wind turbines, and we would need some sort of storage system, but we would be linked with the national grid anyway for complete redundancy. So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, our focus is the seamless relationship, the permission by the local communities to allow us to mine without it being forced on them. And we've got a lot of latitude to gain support from those communities. While our focus from a business point of view is absolutely on driving down those production costs. And we have the extra advantage that if the wind power is economic, and it looks as though it's probably going to be, we would be able to produce uranium that is produced with less greenhouse gases and carbon footprint than just about any other uranium on the planet. So that's what our goal is, and that's what how we're going about it. Thank you very much.